Joe Biden impresses me for being looking very much alike one of the male cast of the movie Joe, which finds a sad ending with the father of a daughter who's resisting the war, shooting her in the back, sort of like a Kent State soldier, turned into a Greek tragedy. Joe Biden isn't a defender of civil rights. He went after social media to shut them down. He was the type of Pennsylvanian to say, oh, so-and-so, this student opposes the Vietnam War, give his name to the Central Intelligence Agency for case monitoring and, if necessary, action. That's the sort of person Joe Biden has always been. And because I was tortured repeatedly in the state of Pennsylvania for what Marquis de Sade would have called good conduct, well chastised. It was a Zionist community. I know some of the stories that Joe Biden has clemenced. And although there's no pun intended, it is relevant to the Mariners, Edgar Martinez, and Roberto Clemente. Because as David Bowie said in Last Temptation, they don't want to be changed. I was attacked by a man when I was in childhood. He had deep pockets and pink pants. His name was Ronnie Shuzinscky, which is like Ronnie Z for short, only it has the word sin hidden in it. In my cinema reviews, I've discovered that Beyond the Valley of the Dolls had a man in it named Ronnie Z for Barzell. The whole Eastminster district was a war zone in those days. You could mistake anything for being out of control, but it was very firmly in control of the Hollywood studio system working with Nixon and Ronald Reagan. Ronnie and Casper attacked me in 1973, which is like Reagan and Weinberger, Casper and Ronnie Z. Not many people knew 6 years before they were elected in 1980 that Ronnie and Casper would be working together in the White House. In 1973, they were already working together on the streets of Pittsburgh. My neighbor, who was named in the script that was planted on me, worked on North by Northwest with Alfred Hitchcock. His name was George Romero. My mother used to tell a story that when she was pregnant with me in her womb, she didn't want to go to see Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, which is very interesting when you look at the Family Intelligence Network that worked a war game where they tried to turn me into a soul of murder by theater stunts involving abortion. Jeff Thompson gave me an industrial drawing that he made of the U.S. Steel Works. He took me to the burning fires of Jones and Lockman when they burned down. And he gave me a stopwatch. Gail Burston's letters always were clocked to the second. It was a blue stopwatch. His neighbors, Gregory Carl, whose gang, the Gutter Snipes, are named in the letters, with Wattenmaker, the neurosurgeon, screaming for more, who played me King Crimson, who knew the whole thing was going on. They were a CIA MK6 operation. The Carl brothers designed a war game of one note leading to another, and the last note was found at a bird bath. So you get some of the ideas that King Crimson was secretly tuning our society to with their Two Virgins war game clogged to the AIDS attack. King Crimson were always wigglers, that they were independent. They weren't independent. They were the heart and soul of the tyranny in our society. They made independent productions like Ovary Lodge, which is a music that basically reduces music to biological existence. They cunningly called their vivisection child mutilation record an observation, which is the word that the government uses when they close down for a day. They're observing a holiday. Lenin and Yoko Ono were partners in this crime. You would think when you saw her art house Nazi film, Fly, which has a woman conked out, nude with a fly buzzing around its armpit, that she was criticizing her husband for the way he would do like this in carousel clubs. But no, they were partners. They were designing a Venus flytrap. They were cynically rewarding each other at the bar of Zell, which led to Mount Desert Island. And they cast me ruthlessly as a child in a role in a snuff film that they are still producing and directing with the help of the government of the state of Washington. There's no question that the loyalties to murderers is as strong in Seattle as the claim that Zionism is representing the United States holds firm in the Biden administration. Under the cloak of communicating with me, Penis Gabriel of Genesis for 3 years, smacking me with these postcards, worked with Walter Hodorowski and John Stockwell of the CIA to make a mockery of my, what Penis Sinfield calls unviolence. John Stockwell showed up on my birthday a few days after I had had an argument with Walter Hodorowski in Allentown, who said that, you know what happens, they shouldn't talk about Gurdjieff on the radio. You know what happens when people talk about secrets. And I said, I didn't believe that. I said that people have an obligation to speak about cults and undercover operations. He said, look what happened at King. And I said, look, I don't want to get into it with you because I don't think that way. And he said, I know you don't. And tapped his ears like that. Stockwell showed up on my birthday and underlined the date there in Allentown. Stockwell was a CIA agent and raidmaster. But 2 days before that appearance of Stockwell, I had gotten a postcard from Piener signed Penny. And I was sitting there reading the Lehigh Brown and White outside Lindeman Library. And a woman was waddling up, and I was reading an ad that said, James, you big, big stud, when are you going to live up to your nickname? And the woman waddled up and said, you look like you'd like to have someone to talk to. I said, I was just looking at an ad that seems like it should be for me. And she looked at it and she said, oh, you're James. And I said, yeah. And she said, I'm Penny. I said, you have a namesake in England. She said, I just got here from England. She told me a story of that Shulman would have liked, of finding a letter from the man who wrote Gulliver's Travels in an Oxford Library book. And she had me go to the Thars, where I found this compendium of stories. It was remarkable. Miles Kirsner was agog at that volume. And she said, have you ever seen the day the earth stood still? And she was talking about Le Corbusier's, wallflower architecture. Because I like Buckminster Fuller. And she said, the day the earth stood still, she was referring to. The next day, I was thinking about the day the earth stood still because of what she said when a woman came on to the elevator, Commerce Plaza, from Sherson Lehman. She was all shaken up. And I said, what happened? She said, Wall Street crashed. And then the next day, John Stockwell, the CIA, showed up. So they had me thinking about the day the earth stood still when Wall Street crashed. This is the sort of thing that Biden holds very dear to, this sort of operation, because they can then blow smoke on it and say it's all paranoid schizophrenia. Going back in time to when the letters first began arriving, and I knew Russell Bennett from John Russell Circle and Hyde Park Circle or something, with Billy Rod, who's now a snarling climate change fanatic in West Virginia, whose mother collected all the newspapers about Abraham Lincoln being murdered. And who, if anybody should be interrogated, it's him, because he knew in English, who lived by Edward Paz and Store. He knew in English, a real Nazi of an English, who had it in for me. Somebody should find out who that creep really was. But they won't. Bennett had a hassock and the roller. He had a copy of my father's book and the rollers for a TV set, it's that. And I would roll around on the hassock as I was on duty and swimmer. And Billy would go around on the TV set monitoring me. So we know what sort of casting system they had in the state of Pennsylvania for children. In snuff films, they were calling I Am the Walrus. And you might call it paranoid schizophrenia evident, but it's actually solving the enigma of cryptoanalytic bomb. When you look at King Crimson, they're not independent. They're the heart and soul of tyranny. Biden has been, people look at things and say, oh, that's just garbage. But you find in this so-called garbage the actual practical intelligence of the mind behind the letters of Gail Burstyn, which alluded to John Pendleton Kennedy, like Ronnie C., the denial framework, the mass production of a plan from Hollywood. And Biden has slowly gotten incognizant. Some people have in the past taken issue with natural deaths of autocrats that were unforeseen, such as Emmanuel Josephson, who thought that FDR had been poisoned. But you find the left have no interest in Gail Burstyn. They crook their nose. Oh, he got the pussy. That's it. That's the end of the story for the AIDS attack. Oh, he got the pussy. We should poison him. And my mother used to hang out with black people who basically saw me as a white to be crushed. They call it cow hooves therapy. Zoe had a dog that would chew cow hooves and they said it was so he wouldn't bite someone. This is what Willie Watmaker was working out with King Crimson and then calling it paranoid. Paranoia's poison door, as the dialectic Greg Carl said, it's established at the outset. Mike McGarvey had another term for it, pigment and figment. I produced reams of evidence that Richard McGarvey, for example, says the persona is put in a gaseous paint chamber. I said many times Casper kidnapped and gassed me in a place called King's Estate across the route from Jennifer Rubin's house. At a place where the Zionists were caught red-handed, cattle prodding children with Down syndrome. Post Gazette. And they smushed the story. They covered the story because Wilzel Brown's theory was getting Bama, the big pussy of Japanese aristocracy. It was a two virgins war game put together by the Jeffin Corporation around Midori Goto. And they slipped the black lady panther into my bed and then how jumped down, hold pee-pee, Louie, Louie, Louie. And it was a switchboard cartel. And Biden was in on this. They have a very Japanese-looking girl in a porno film online made by a company called Joe. This is his idea of an arc of pussy distribution. And it's the root activity that Donald Trump is involved in. The man who indoctrinated me to sex. I had nowhere I could. When I was in neurotraumatic seizures, screaming in an Iowa river, it was because I remembered freezing cold day when I couldn't go to school because I knew they would be waiting for me, and they found me. This was the hideous trauma that the University of Pittsburgh and Penis Gabriel were voodooing as a hidden date rape dag of +1. So they wanted to inject me with HIV. They still do. They're really rancid people in the state of Washington. You know, they've given me Parkinson's, poisoned me in the mouth as an act of mercy because they're straining at the leash. Well, Ostro was the one place who would open his door to me on days like that. And then he'd start saying, oh, all the girls want it. Some of them are so tight you have to squeeze your eyes. Some of them you really have to work to get off on them. Donald had an enormo, and his dad was named Val, Val. And Val Ostro is like Dracula Drevo 5, VO5, right? We get rid of him, burst at the fourth embryo, it's three strikes and you're out, pussy ball. And Donald indoctrinated me, and then Greg Carl says, the persona is subjected to the theft of degradations of the X motive. They trafficked me. And finally, I got sick enough of it that I went to try to find out what was going on and try to get evidence to prove that this is what they were doing, which I have. And they just laugh. They say, go to 1717 Pacific. So she was just 17, if you know what I mean. It's all two virgins pussy ball. It's a hookonomic system that's built into the state apparatus. And the point is that that's what they're not teaching when they say, don't teach sex education. I mean, a normal person would say, it's a force of creation. You should make sure that it's a woman you love and you're loyal to because you want to have children and raise a family. But they were like, no, John Lennon's going to make like casual sex is just a form of recreation and fun. And they say, don't tell us your parochial values. What they don't, and they stop talking about it. Let parents be parents. Well, what they're really hiding is a military operation called Two Virgins Pussy Ball that was clocked in the AIDS attack. That's what they're really not willing to talk about and really hiding. And it's a race advocacy system because the winner of the Pussy Ball Olympics was Barack Obama and the woman who took third in Beijing when Valieva fell for the fourth dimension. That led to the realization that these Uspensky people chart back in time to the dawn of cinema, a counterfeiting then called Fayum, which I've covered in other works. But Hitler Reagan was working together behind the scenes in the 30s and 40s, putting this together, which proves that John Lennon pulled a Houdini. You can't really escape that. His role was far too central for them to just say, "Oh well, um, we'll leave it to chance that this asshole who is notoriously uncooperative will go out that night." He was in on it. That's the only explanation. But then they pull and the whole thing unravels. It never happened, Quibble. We're on the side. You got the pussy. You got the pussy. And that's the end of it. That's Ringo Starr's mentality.